Country music thrives on authenticity, but a devastating plague forced some of its brightest talents to hide their truth. From the stages of Hee Haw to the silver screen, these performers and creators faced a merciless disease in an unforgiving time. Their stories are a testament to bravery and talent, starting with a musician whose band blended country and rock into a timeless sound. 1. Tom Fogerty. You absolutely know the sound. It's the driving guitar riff of Proud Mary, the swampy beat of Born on the Bayou, the voice of a generation singing along to Bad Moon Risen. That sound belonged to Creedence Clearwater Revival, or CCR, a band that felt so deeply Southern and rooted in Americana that many people were shocked to learn they were from El Cerrito, California. And while his younger brother John was the unmistakable voice and lead songwriter, the band would have never existed without the steady hand and ambition of its rhythm guitarist, Tom Fogerty. Tom was the one who started it all. Back in the late 1950s, he was the lead singer of his own rock and roll band. His younger brother John tagged along, and soon they brought in two friends, Stu Cook and Doug Clifford, to form a group called the Blue Velvets. They played school dances and local bars for years, slowly honing their craft. Tom was the leader, the frontman, the business-minded one who pushed them forward. But as time went on, it became clear that John's raw, powerful voice and incredible gift for songwriting were something special. In a move that showed his dedication to the music over his own ego, Tom stepped back from the microphone, letting his little brother take the lead. They renamed themselves Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the rest is history. From 1968 to 1972, they were one of the biggest bands on the planet, selling millions of records and defining a sound that blended rock, blues, soul, and a heavy dose of country storytelling. Their music was all over the radio, providing a soundtrack to a turbulent time in American history. But the success came with a price. The atmosphere inside the band grew tense. John had become the undeniable creative force, and he exerted near total control over their music and business decisions. Tom, who had founded the group, felt his own creative contributions and opinions were being completely ignored. He wanted more of a say, more of a democracy, but the conflict with his brother became unbearable. In 1971, at the absolute height of the band's fame, he made the heartbreaking decision to walk away. He embarked on a solo career, releasing albums like Zephyr National that leaned even more into the country and folk roots that had always been part of the CCR sound. He just wanted to play music, free from the drama. His life, however, took a devastatingly unexpected turn in the 1980s. He needed surgery for a persistent back ailment, and during the procedure, received a blood transfusion. At the time, the world was just waking up to the nightmare of a mysterious new condition, and the nation's blood supply was not always safe. The transfusion he received was contaminated with the relentless virus. He kept his diagnosis a secret from almost everyone. In an era filled with fear and wild misinformation, he likely feared what the news would do to his family and his musical legacy. He just wanted to live his life, but the horrifying disease was a relentless shadow. It tragically led to his passing in 1990 at the young age of 48 from complications related to the unforgiving illness. The man who started a legendary band and helped create a timeless American sound was silenced by a tragedy he never saw coming, a quiet end for a man whose music was anything but. His story is one of quiet strength, but the next name brought laughter to millions on country TV screens, hiding a heartbreaking battle of his own. 2. Wayland Flowers. If you were gathered around the television in the 70s or 80s, you couldn't miss the fabulous, hilarious, and utterly unique duo of Wayland Flowers and Madame. Wayland was a soft-spoken, kind-faced man from a small town in Georgia, but his creative partner was a force of nature. Madame was a puppet, yes, but she was more alive than most people. Dripping in rhinestones, wrapped in a mink stole, and never without a witty, often naughty comeback, she was an old-school Hollywood broad with a sharp tongue and a heart of gold. She would cackle, She would flirt, and she would tell stories about her many ex-husbands, each one more ridiculous than the last. She was, in a word, unforgettable. Wayland, who had been fascinated with puppetry since childhood, developed the character of Madame in the 1960s and spent years perfecting the act in comedy clubs. The genius of it was the dynamic. Wayland was the shy straight man, trying to keep his unpredictable friend in line, while Madame could get away with saying anything. Their big break came on talk shows, but they truly found a home with mainstream American audiences, especially in the world of country entertainment. They were frequent and beloved guest stars on Hee Haw, where Madame's glitzy Hollywood style was a hilarious contrast to the down-home country setting of Cornfield County. They were also regulars on the music countdown show Solid Gold and became a staple of the Las Vegas scene, sharing stages with the very country stars Madame would often poke fun at. Behind the laughter and the applause, Wayland's life was far more complicated. He was a gay man in an era when that was not something an entertainer, especially one popular in Middle America, could be open about. The puppet was his shield, a brilliant way for him to express his creativity and razor-sharp wit without putting himself in the spotlight. But in the mid-1980s, he was faced with a challenge he couldn't hide from forever. He received the devastating news that he had contracted the new and frightening virus. He kept his battle intensely private, terrified that if the truth came out, the career he had so carefully built with Madame would crumble. So he channeled all his energy into his work. Even as the devastating illness weakened him, he continued to perform, sometimes having to physically prop himself up backstage just to find the strength to make people laugh. In a final heartbreaking act of dedication to his craft, he even performed a show from his hospital bed just weeks before he passed away. He refused to let the sickness silence the character he had so lovingly brought to life. Wayland Flowers passed away in 1988 at just 48 years old. For many fans, his death was a sudden, shocking loss, a sad end for the man who, with a block of wood and a lot of heart, had become one of the most memorable faces on television. His courage paved the way for the next story, a Hollywood icon whose Western roles and all-American image connected him to country's heart, all while hiding a secret that would change the world. 3. Rock Hudson. For decades, Rock Hudson was the definition of the Hollywood leading man. He was tall, impossibly handsome, with a gentle charisma that made him a box office titan. He was a product of Hollywood's golden age, a time when studios had immense power over their stars' lives. They created their images, gave them new names, and dictated who they could see and what they could say. Hudson, born Roy Scherer Jr., was their masterpiece. His persona was that of the ideal, all-American man. While he was famous for romantic comedies like Pillow Talk with Doris Day, his rugged good looks made him a natural fit for westerns, a genre that shares its soul with country music. His most iconic role in this vein was in the epic 1956 film Giant, where he played a Texas rancher. The film was a sprawling saga of family, oil, and the American dream, themes that resonate deeply in country storytelling. To maintain his perfect image, Hudson had to hide a fundamental part of who he was. He was a gay man, a truth that, if revealed, would have instantly destroyed the career the studio had so carefully built. He played the part of the handsome bachelor and even entered into a brief arranged marriage to his agent secretary, Phyllis Gates, to quiet the relentless rumors in gossip magazines. For 30 years, he lived a double life, a public-facing superstar and a private man who could only be himself with a close circle of trusted friends, like his dear friend Elizabeth Taylor. He navigated this treacherous terrain with grace, becoming one of the most beloved stars in the world. In the early 1980s, his health began to fail. His appearance changed drastically, and the public grew concerned. Then, in 1985, during a trip to Paris to seek a special experimental treatment, he collapsed. The news could no longer be contained. His French publicist made the shocking announcement that Rock Hudson was battling the merciless epidemic that was sweeping the globe. The revelation sent an earthquake through the public consciousness. it was a terrifying moment. If Rock Hudson, the picture of health and masculinity, could get this illness, then anyone could. His diagnosis instantly changed the public conversation, forcing the world to confront a disease many had tried to ignore. Elizabeth Taylor immediately sprang into action, co-founding the American Foundation for an End to the Disease and becoming its most powerful advocate. Rock Hudson passed away in October 1985 at 59. The man who had spent his life hiding his truth became, in his final days, the public face of the horrifying disease, bringing a new level of awareness and urgency to the fight. The next story takes us from the silver screen to the smoky stages of the South, focusing on a gritty guitarist who lived the outlaw country life. 4. Donnie Lanier. Life on the road with Hank Williams Jr. is not for the faint of heart. Bocephus, as he's known to his legions of fans, built his career on a foundation of loud, rowdy, outlaw country. His shows were legendary parties, and the musicians who backed him had to be tough, talented, and ready for anything. For years, a key part of that powerhouse sound was the Bomba Band, and one of its steadfast members was guitarist Donnie Lanier. Donnie was a true journeyman, a road warrior who lived the life that so many country songs are written about. He wasn't the star, but he was essential, laying down the killer guitar licks on anthems like "A Country Boy Can Survive" and "All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight." The outlaw country scene of the 70s and 80s was a tough world. It was a reaction against the polished Nashville sound, and it prided itself on being gritty, authentic, and independent. The lifestyle was grueling, a non-stop cycle of tour buses, late nights, and high-energy shows. The Bama Band wasn't just a collection of musicians. They were a brotherhood forged in the fires of endless one-night stands in arenas and honky-tonks across America. They were known as one of the tightest, most professional bands in the business, able to whip a crowd into a frenzy night after night. Donnie was a key part of that machine, a reliable pro who lived and breathed the music. But this world of outlaw country, with its macho image and hard-living reputation, was one of the last places on earth a person could feel safe, revealing a vulnerability. Sometime during his career, Donnie contracted the deeply misunderstood virus that was beginning to cast a long shadow over the world. It's hard to imagine the profound loneliness he must have felt. Surrounded by his bandmates, his brothers on the road, he was carrying a secret that he felt he could never share. In that era, the stigma was intense, and in the rough and tumble world of country music, it was simply an unspoken terror. Revealing his diagnosis could have meant the end of his career and his friendships, so he battled his illness in silence, a quiet fight happening far from the roar of the crowd. As his health declined, he had to step away from the road. Donnie Lanier passed away in 1993. His death was a quiet loss, a footnote in the larger story of country music, but it represents the untold stories of countless other musicians and road crew members who faced the modern-day plague alone, forced into the shadows by the culture they were a part of. His story leads to an actor whose TV roles brought him into country's orbit, with a secret he carried to the end. 5. Dak Rambo. With his classic Hollywood good looks and easygoing charm, Dak Rambo was a familiar face on television for decades. His life was marked by early tragedy. He and his identical twin brother Dirk were discovered by movie star Loretta Young and cast in her TV show in the 1960s. They were a handsome pair, destined for stardom. But in 1967, his brother Dirk was killed in a tragic fire. Dak was heartbroken but persevered, building a long and successful career in Hollywood on his own. He became a household name for his roles in soap operas like All My Children and Another World. His most famous role for many, however, was as the charming cousin Jack Ewing on the primetime mega-hit Dallas. That show, a global phenomenon centered on a wealthy Texas family, was steeped in a Southern culture of big money, big hats, and big drama that was a close cousin to the world of country music. His connection to country audiences became even more direct with his guest appearances on Hee Haw. Sharing the screen with country legends like Roy Clark and Buck Owens, Dak's charismatic personality made him a natural fit for the show's blend of music and comedy. He was one of those actors who felt accessible and friendly, the kind of star you felt like you knew. He was living a successful life, a working actor who was recognized and beloved by fans across the country, a true survivor. Behind the public smile, however, Dak was carrying a heavy burden. In 1991, he received the terrifying news that he had contracted the devastating virus. At first, he was devastated and chose to retreat from public life. But after seeing the impact the illness was having on so many others and the fear it was creating, he made a courageous decision. He decided to go public with his diagnosis. In a series of interviews, he spoke openly about being bisexual and about his fight with the devastating disease. This was an incredibly brave act in the conservative entertainment world of the early 1990s. He said he wanted to use his celebrity to help educate people and fight the prejudice that so many faced. He dedicated the last years of his life to activism, trying to make a difference. Sadly, the unforgiving illness progressed quickly, and Dak Rambo passed away from complications in March 1994. He was only 52 years old. The charming actor who had graced so many TV screens left behind a legacy not just of entertainment, but of courage and advocacy in the face of an unforgiving epidemic. His story is a tragic footnote to a TV legend's life, a private sorrow behind a public smile. But the devastating illness didn't just touch the people connected to the stars. It also silenced the very geniuses who wrote the songs and stories that captured the world's imagination. 6. Mark Spaeth. For 20 years, she was the queen of the television Western. As Miss Kitty Russell, the sharp, savvy, and secretly soft-hearted saloon owner on Gunsmoke, Amanda Blake was an icon. Gunsmoke was more than a TV show. It was an American institution, a weekly visit to Dodge City that families across the country never missed. The show's dust-caked streets, its heroic marshal, and its complex characters were deeply intertwined with the culture of country and Western life. Amanda Blake's portrayal of Miss Kitty made her a beloved figure, especially among country music fans who saw their own values of strength and resilience in her character. After leaving the show, she dedicated her life to animal welfare, another passion that endeared her to many. In the early 1980s, after several marriages, Amanda Blake found love again with a man named Mark Spaeth, a Texas real estate developer and city councilman from Austin. He was a handsome, charismatic man, and they married in 1984. For Blake, it seemed like a happy new chapter, a chance to settle into a quieter life away from the glare of Hollywood. She moved to Texas with him, embracing her new role. The public knew him as the man who had captured the heart of the legendary Miss Kitty, a figure forever linked to the romantic, idealized world of the American West. But their happiness was tragically short-lived. Behind the scenes, a dark cloud was forming. Mark Spaeth fell ill with a mysterious and aggressive sickness. He was diagnosed with a terrible disease that was causing so much fear and confusion across the country. In the conservative landscape of Texas politics and in the shadow of his wife's wholesome public image, the diagnosis was kept a closely guarded secret. He battled the condition privately, but his health declined rapidly. Mark Spaeth passed away in 1985, just a year after their wedding. The story became even more heartbreaking 4 years later when Amanda Blake herself passed away. While her official cause of death was complicated, her doctor later confirmed that she too had been battling the same devastating virus, leading to speculation that their love story had a shared, tragic end. The man who married a TV legend became a sad part of a story of private pain hidden behind a famous public face. But the devastating illness didn't just touch the people connected to the stars. It also silenced the very geniuses who wrote the songs and stories that captured the world's imagination. 7. Karen Dalton. Karen Dalton's voice was not like anyone else's. It was a high, lonely, and haunting sound, full of bluesy bends and a world-weary ache that felt ancient. It was a voice that, Once you heard it, you could never forget. A native of Oklahoma, she was a key figure in the Greenwich Village folk scene of the 1960s, a contemporary of people like Bob Dylan and Fred Neil. She played the long-neck banjo and the 12-string guitar, and her music was a raw, powerful mix of traditional folk, gospel, blues, and Appalachian country. She didn't just sing songs, she inhabited them, twisting their melodies into something uniquely her own. Bob Dylan was so impressed by her that he once wrote that she was his favorite singer and that she could sing the blues like Billie Holiday and play the guitar like Jimmy Reed. That's high praise from a legend. Despite her immense talent and the respect of her peers, Karen Dalton never achieved mainstream fame. Part of the reason was her personality. She was notoriously reclusive and often uncomfortable performing for audiences, sometimes turning her back to the crowd. She was a pure artist who resisted the commercial pressures of the music industry. As a result, she only released 2 official studio albums in her lifetime. It's So Hard to Tell Who's Going to Love You the Best in 1969, and the masterpiece In My Own Time in 1971. These albums showcased her incredible ability to reinterpret traditional country and blues songs, making them completely her own. Her life was marked by hardship, including long battles with addiction that often derailed her career. She drifted in and out of the music scene for years, eventually settling in a small mobile home in upstate New York, far from the spotlight. It was during the 1980s that she faced her final, devastating challenge. She contracted the terrifying new virus. For a woman who was already so private and lived on the fringes, the stigma of the condition only pushed her further into isolation. She battled the disease quietly, with the help of a few dedicated friends. Karen Dalton passed away from complications related to the horrifying disease in March 1993 at the age of 55. In the years since her death, her legend has only grown. A new generation of musicians, from Nick Cave to Joanna Newsom, has discovered her work, and she is now celebrated as one of the most unique and soulful voices in the history of American folk and country blues music. Ashman was a master of heartfelt lyrics that told a complete story, a talent shared by the best country songwriters. But while he worked his magic behind the scenes, our next star commanded the stage with a level of sparkle and showmanship the world had never seen before. 8. Howard Ashman. Think about the song Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid, or Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast. These aren't just catchy tunes. They are masterful pieces of storytelling, packed with wit, character, and pure joy. They are songs known and loved by generations of fans all over the world. The genius who wrote the words to these unforgettable songs was a man named Howard Ashman. He was a brilliant lyricist and playwright, a visionary who almost single-handedly sparked the Disney animation renaissance of the late 80s and early 90s. Ashman got his start in theater, achieving huge off-Broadway success with the quirky, dark, and hilarious musical Little Shop of Horrors. His true gift was for musical storytelling, the ability to write a song that not only entertained, but also deepened a character and moved the plot forward. When Disney brought him in to work on The Little Mermaid, he brought that sensibility with him. He didn't just write songs, he helped shape the entire story. His work had a timeless, folk-like quality that resonated with broad American audiences, much like the narrative traditions of country music. Songs like Belle from Beauty and the Beast paint a rich picture of small-town life, a theme at the very heart of many country classics. But as he was creating this magical world of hope and romance, his own world was being consumed by darkness. In 1988, right after finishing his work on The Little Mermaid, Howard was diagnosed with the devastating virus that was taking so many lives. He kept his condition a secret from almost everyone at Disney, fearing he would be fired. He poured every last ounce of his energy into his work on Beauty and the Beast. Many have since noted that he saw the story of the Beast, a cursed figure racing against time to find love and break the spell, as a powerful metaphor for his own struggle. In his final months, he was so weak that he worked from his hospital bed, communicating with the animators and his music partner, Alan Menken, by phone. He passed away in March 1991 at the age of 40. Ashman was a master of heartfelt lyrics that told a complete story, a talent shared by the best country songwriters. But while he worked his magic behind the scenes, our next star commanded the stage with a level of sparkle and showmanship the world had never seen before. 9. Liberace. There was only one Mr. Showmanship, and his name was Liberace. For more than 4 decades, he was a phenomenon, a one-man spectacle of glitz, glamour, and pure, unadulterated entertainment. He was a classically trained pianist of immense skill, but he knew that what audiences really wanted was a show, and what a show he gave them. He performed in diamond-encrusted suits and massive fur capes that weighed hundreds of pounds on stages adorned with candelabras and mirrored grand pianos. His homes were showcases of opulence, with themed rooms, priceless antiques, and swimming pools shaped like pianos. He was a character larger than life. While his music was based in classical and pop standards, his audience was pure mainstream America. He was a staple in the same Vegas showrooms and on the same TV specials as the biggest names in country music, from Johnny Cash to Loretta Lynn. He understood the Heartland audience and knew how to charm them with his warm, folksy onstage banter, often talking about his love for his mother and his humble beginnings. He even published cookbooks. His brand of wholesome, family-friendly spectacle made him a beloved figure to the same crowds that filled country music halls. But the smiling, winking persona he showed the world was a carefully constructed mask. Liberace, or Lee as his friends called him, was a gay man, and he lived in constant fear that his secret would be exposed. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, such a revelation would have been absolute poison for a star of his magnitude. He fought viciously to protect his secret, even suing magazines that dared to hint at his private life and winning large settlements. This lifetime of secrecy set the stage for his final, tragic act. In the mid-1980s, his fans noticed a dramatic change. He had lost a tremendous amount of weight, and his once energetic performances seemed frail. His management team issued a series of bizarre excuses, at one point claiming he was on a strict watermelon diet. The truth was that he was dying from a modern-day plague. He refused to admit it publicly, even to his closest friends, until the very end. He passed away in February 1987 at the age of 67. In a final dramatic twist, his manager and doctor continued to deny the true cause of death until the county coroner stepped in, performed an official examination, and announced to the world that Liberace had died of complications from the devastating epidemic. The man who lived his life as one of the most visible people on the planet had died hiding a secret he was too afraid to share. His story of glamour and secrecy leads to an actor whose early music career flirted with country's roots, and whose most famous role would haunt him forever. 10. Anthony Perkins. The name Anthony Perkins is forever linked with one of the most iconic and terrifying characters in film history, Norman Bates of the Bates Motel. His performance in Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 thriller Psycho was a masterclass in quiet menace and disturbed psychology. With his nervous smile and intense dark eyes, Perkins created a character so unforgettable that it would define his entire career. He was a brilliant actor, having earned an Oscar nomination for his role in the Civil War film Friendly Persuasion. But the shadow of Norman Bates was long, and he was forever typecast as the troubled, sensitive, and often dangerous young man. What most people don't know is that before he checked into the Bates Motel, Anthony Perkins was a burgeoning pop star. In the late 1950s, at the height of the teen idol craze, record labels saw his boyish good looks and gentle demeanor as the perfect package. He released several albums and singles, singing romantic pop songs that had a distinct rockabilly flavor. Rockabilly, that perfect blend of country and rhythm and blues, was the sound of the era, made famous by artists like Elvis Presley and Carl Perkins. Anthony Perkins's music fit right in, and he even scored a top 30 hit with the song Moonlight Swim. His music career was a brief but real connection to the roots of what would become country rock. His personal life was just as complex as the characters he often played. He was the son of a famous stage actor, Osgood Perkins, who died when Anthony was just 5, leaving a profound mark on him. He was a deeply private man who struggled with his identity and relationships in a Hollywood that was incredibly unforgiving. He eventually married photographer Barry Berenson in 1973, and they had 2 sons, presenting a happy, artistic family image to the world. But in the late 1980s, he learned he had contracted the relentless virus. He kept the diagnosis a secret from nearly everyone for years, terrified of the public scrutiny and the effect it would have on his sons. He continued to work, even as the illness took its toll. In his final days, he worked on a powerful and moving statement that was released just after his passing in September 1992. He spoke not of his own suffering, but of the compassion he had witnessed, writing that he had learned more about love and selflessness from his encounters in the world of the Great Plague than he ever had in the competitive and cruel world of Hollywood. In a heartbreaking final chapter to the family's story, his wife Barry was a passenger on one of the planes that was flown into the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001.